Welcome everyone to our first webinar of the Healing Indigenous Lives Spring webinar series. We're so grateful that you guys could join us from all over the country. Today's topic is really going to help our communities really talk about how can we host our own conversations around difficult topics. We know that Native youth are, really excited to really open the lines of communications with their communities, what we've been through, and how we can address some of our community challenges. But it's not always easy. So today, I am here at the Unity headquarters, and I'm joined with some amazing Native youth from our different youth groups. So I'll have them introduce themselves. And we just wanted to give a welcome from Unity, from our Executive Director, Mary Kim Titla.
Hi, everyone. So I'll go ahead and start it off. I'm so happy that we're kicking off such a meaningful webinar for you. Thank you, Lauren, Ashley, the peer guides, our other peer leaders, Katie. Thank you for being a part of this. I'm super excited about these connections. Over the last year, Unity has offered a virtual connection almost every week for the last year. So that's pretty remarkable, I think, for any organization. And it just speaks to how dedicated Unity is, and especially our youth leaders who are making sure that we're making these connections with everyone. So I just want to welcome everyone. Again, my name is Mary Kim Titla, and I serve as the Executive Director for Unity. I'm a member of the San Carlos Apache tribe here in Arizona. So Dagot Eh, which is a welcome in the Apache language. I just want to give a quick plug for the National Unity Conference, which is coming up July 2nd through the 6th in Dallas, Texas. And behind me, you see what will be set up at the conference, which is our registration site. So this is a scene from San Diego a few years ago, but we are excited to welcome up to 1,000 Native youth and advisors. And so this year, attendance will be limited to 1,000. Normally we get more than double that. So if you're interested in that, I hope you'll go to Unity's website at www.unityinc.org and look for all the conference information. We are also wanting to plug that the hotel rooms are going to be at a premium, meaning that you probably need to book them now, even if you haven't registered, because those go very quickly and there's some really good rates. And the registration rate will go up. So we want to take advantage of anything early. So I hope that you'll do that. And lastly, we are looking for workshop presenters. So I hope that youth councils, and even advisors will sign up to do a workshop presentation. We are looking for all things that fall under Unity's wellness core fundamentals, and that's spiritual, mental, social, and physical. So it could be a cultural presentation. It could be something about suicide prevention. It could be just fun and games. It could be a youth council talking about what they did to get through the pandemic, or some of the community service work that was done throughout the pandemic. So we want you to take advantage of that opportunity, and I hope that you will. So again, welcome. Thank you, Ahia, for joining us. I'm so excited to see all of you down the road at future webinars or at an in-person Unity event. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary Kim. So I would like to turn it over. Thank you guys for joining us. Feel free to, if you have any questions, feel free to comment in the chat box or the comments below. We're also live on Unity's Facebook. So I will turn it over to our youth leaders today, Colin, Katie, and Sunwai. Would you like to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you've been doing with Unity recently?
I'll go. Monaco, everyone. My name is Caitlin Johnston. I go by Katie. I'm the newest Pacific Region representative for the United National Indian Tribal Youth Organization. I'm very excited to be part of this little workshop today and getting to learn something new and just be able to participate. I'm also the Miss Pabanamaneena Power Princess 2019 to 2021. I'm also the Bishop Tribal Youth Council president, and so I'm just excited to get to participate with all of you.
I guess I'll follow right after Katie. Thanks for having us today. My name is Sonwai Wakiyuta. I am a peer guide working with Healy, the Healing Indigenous Lives Initiative. My teammates, Katie and Colin, are here with me to help us out. I'm Wallapai and Hopi, 20 going on 21, and I'm just really excited to see what conversations we go on today. Like MK mentioned before, we've been trying out this new virtual resources tool during the pandemic, and it's been a lot to handle because we miss seeing people in person, but virtual stuff, you'll still get the same information, same quality. And I just hope you learned something new today. Thank you.
All right, I'm up next. So bonjour, everybody. My name is Colin Church, and I have a dual residency in Wisconsin and Michigan. I actually go back and forth quite often. I'm from the Pokagon Band of Potawatomi Indians, and I am the Great Plains and Midwest peer guide. And I'm just excited to have a nice conversation with you guys today, kind of to share my experiences throughout the years with you guys and just offer whatever I can to those who may need just some advice or just want their voice to be heard and to share some insights. Thanks.
Thank you so much, everyone. And we have a few people with us here on Zoom. Let us know if you'd like to introduce yourself at any time. Like we said, this is a community conversation, so we really do want to hear your feedback. And we're just so lucky and blessed to have the support of our partners at OJJDP, who really make this initiative possible, to be able to reach out into our communities and empower Native youth and just promote community safety among our youth. So thank you so much, Kara, for joining us today. You're amazing. So today's topic really is about empowering Native youth to have effective communication with their communities around difficult conversations. So we know Unity believes the most effective and powerful messaging comes from youth to youth training. So the Unity peer guides in the past have hosted regional town halls where we really collected your voice and asked you questions like, what makes you feel safe in your community? What are some of the main challenges? And so this is the beginning of a 5-part online learning series, which is a conversation that is really challenging the community of how can you move forward and have these conversations in your own backyard. So today we will be going over some of the feedback that we received at our town halls. But we're really gonna go through, and our peer guides are going to lead you through like step by step. Here's some pointers and suggestions of how you can hold your own community gathering, and it can be on a specific topic, or it could be in general, just learning more about what areas could our community grow and which areas do we want to talk about, and opening those lines of communication. So I would like to share with you a video. And this video is actually just one that will be as a part of a series coming up that the peer guides released with their reflections on hearing some of your feedback. So each peer guide really took a theme that they found from the town halls, and they're creating a series of these videos. And so you guys are the very first ones to see them. It's a sneak peek of what's to come, and keep an eye out for the report that will be accompanied by these videos that we really hope these can set an example. So when you have your community findings, you could do something similar in your community. So welcome, William. He is our Northeast Executive Committee youth as well, and he will be joining our conversation. So welcome, you guys. And again, feel free to comment any questions in the chat box for our youth leaders, and we will be answering those live. So here you go. This is our first viewing of one of our town hall reflections from peer guide Audrey Mitchell. During our town hall meetings, we found that culture is one thing that really came up in most of our town hall meetings to use as a prevention tool. And when I say culture as a prevention tool, I mean using your culture to get away from any kind of negativity that's going on within your lives. Rather than turning to drugs or alcohol or any kind of negative stuff, you can turn to your cultural teachings, your knowledge, whatever that may help you get on the right path, clear your mind, help you get out of that negative space, whatever youth may be facing these days. They can turn to their cultural practices to help them stay on the right path and get through those difficult times, whatever they may be facing. And so the second point that I have is culture as an intervention tool. And so we hear a lot about culture as prevention to help youth stay away from taking the bad road. But we want to talk about culture as intervention specifically to youth who have already been affected by the juvenile justice system. To those who may have already been offenders, they can still turn to culture as an intervention tool. They don't have to go back down the same path that they have always, been introduced to. They can turn to new, more positive outlets with their cultural teachings to help them better themselves and to help them throughout their lives. And another thing that I personally noticed was, because I got to be a part of the town hall meetings and also the OJJDP tribal listening meeting, I was able to find that even tribal leaders of all different nations have also used culture as a prevention and an intervention tool. And they think it's a very, very great idea. Many of the tribal leaders try to embrace their culture and also try to add whatever kind of cultural teachings that they can within their tribe, whether it be having a school have a Native American club, whatever they can do to help the youth really try to grasp a hold of their culture, and continue that cultural knowledge down the line to help their Native youth get through those difficult times, or to even just have them learn it so they can pass it down to their children. It's a very important thing that we all know about our traditional teachings, however much we may be able to find out. It can really be used to help you through whatever you're going through. When I was younger, I actually grew up in an urban area in Mesa, Arizona, which is a city. I didn't grow up on any kind of sort of reservation or any kind of community. And so I had kind of that disconnect away from my culture and the people that would eventually be teaching me my culture besides my family. Growing up, my mom and my grandparents have tried to teach me as much as they can, but being in an urban area isn't really the ideal place to learn about all of your cultural knowledge, because it's kind of harder to grasp that concept of your own culture. But when I was in high school, I joined a Native American Youth Council for the first time, and that's when I really got interested in wanting to learn my own cultural background, is when I found that there was other people out there like me, other youth that I could relate to. And it was just kind of interesting for myself at that time to have these things in common with other people that I never had growing up.
And so that really made me want to go learn more about my culture. And then I got introduced to Unity. And that's when I learned more about the Native Americans and other Indigenous people across the nation and across the world. And I think it's really a beautiful thing that we all get to come together and get to share our cultural teachings with each other. So that's another reason why I really wanted to still get introduced to more things that I can. I started trying to learn how to introduce myself in my native language. I started learning how to sing in Navajo, and just having those couple of things that I know how to do now has really helped me get through some of the toughest parts of my life. So I really do think that culture as prevention and intervention is something that really can help Native youth through whatever difficult time they're going through. It can really help them get further in life.
Unity Peer Guides are here to help. We know that together we can heal our communities. The Healing Indigenous Lives Initiative is supported by a cooperative agreement between Unity Inc. and the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention.
So we're really lucky to have youth here and youth who have participated in these programs throughout the year. And this is just an extension of that program. So we took a lot away from those community conversations. And so today we're going to really be opening it up to our community. And I want to hear from our Unity youth. Why do you think it's important, especially during this time of like having virtual connections, to really open the door and start a community dialogue to hear how Native youth are doing? So I'll turn it over to our youth here, our panelists. Will, would you like to introduce yourself?
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Will Mosley. I'm Nanako Kalani Lenape, and I'm the Northeast representative for Unity's Executive Committee. I can't hear you.
So what do you guys, why do you think it's important to challenge our communities right now to host their own, whether it be a town hall or community gathering, to really talk about their issues that they're facing right now?
I think it's important to create the dialogue just to get what everyone's kind of like thinking on the certain situation that's happening in their community, so that you know that if there's any issues that a particular group or a particular family is going through, that it's being heard, and one it could be that issue could be tackled and solved. And hopefully if someone brings that issue up, maybe there's someone else that wasn't confident to bring a similar issue up, so that it can help many other people that were afraid to talk about a similar issue.
Well, one thing that I think about when we challenge communities that create dialogue from our Native youth, I think of it in kind of like a negative way. Some people try to keep their problems underneath the rug and hidden, but then rumors go spreading around, and then you come in digging in people's business and trying to like help problems. But at the same time, people don't want help. I mean, that's what I'm running into in my community. It's just that like whenever I'm trying to create dialogue about environmental justice or any type of justice for youth and juvenile justice system, it's just kind of, it always hits a barricade. I'm always running into obstacles. So I don't know why it's important, but it's important to do something because I keep doing it. I don't know why I keep doing it. It's fun. It's fun.
It must be working. We had a youth comment. Thank you, Anthony, for joining on Facebook. He says, I think we could all have, if we could all have a saying that we could say in our own language, it would help unite us in the community conversations. Anthony shared, it could be a connecting point through a book or a saying. I think we have a lot of trouble getting word out because we don't have something written like a book. He gave the example of how Bibles are everywhere and they unite people. And then Anthony concluded by saying that's a good idea for like having town meetings. But he said he wouldn't know where to start. So thank you, Anthony. We're really glad that you shared that online. And he says, I used to try to explain water data management to people, and you can imagine, like if people don't know where you're coming from or if they don't have like a visual, you're right, Anthony. And then Iowa Tribe of Oklahoma, he says, virtual presence has enabled people to expand their community. Have you ever experienced more of your tribal members that live further away from your tribe participating? And he says they've experienced that.
I really like Anthony's comments about how he doesn't know where to start when trying to find the town hall meetings. And really, we don't have to call them town hall meetings. We just don't even have to call them meetings in general. We just got to be able to be comfortable with conversating in simple, loose situations. I found some of the best ways for me to get a lot of dialogue and questions and conversations out of some people is by participating in the rumor mill. You know, I finally graduated from being a youth that stays away from the ante table, and now I'm sitting at the ante table. So it's a different experience because there's a bunch of memes on Facebook going around where it's like when you're finally old enough to hear the family rumors and it all starts making sense, because it does start making sense. And that's a different type of conversation that comes around. But I've been sneaky about it because me being able to push buttons with my aunties and my grandmas, I'm able to question their types of opinions, and those opinions turn into a learning and education type of conversation. I'm learning to be more respectful about boundaries, and they're learning about actual resources and stuff that I'm connected in. And then on the other note, from the last comment where it's like the virtual connection and we have people off the reservation and going back and forth, I think that has to do with more of physical presence. You know, we have a lot of people that put other people down just because they left home, but they left home in the first place to possibly pursue a different education and possibly bring those resources back to the community, but they feel discouraged to come back to the community because they left home and they thought they were better than other people. And there's just this kind of tug and pull of jealousy that goes back and forth. I mean, I've been kind of that situation before. I grew up on the reservation, but we left when I was like starting high school, and like I try to go back and because my parents still work on the reservation. I have cousins and my grandmas are still there, but it's a different vibe when you go back to the res after you've left for a while. People start looking at you differently. They start expecting more from you, or that either you're just an apple who red on the outside, white on the inside. But really, it's just a matter of code switching. Code switching has to do with learning your situations and how to actually pursue conversation without, like, based on your audience. And my recommendation for that with virtual resources would be to be consistent with asking the questions and getting feedback, because without consistency, people are just going to hear you speak once and never hear from you again.
I love that. Thank you, Sunway. and she'll jump back on with us again, but that's so true. I really want to open up again. She brought up a lot of different challenges that a youth may be facing when they're hosting these conversations, like on their audience and making sure people feel included. What have you guys experienced? Like the Iowa tribe brought up, the presence is a good thing, that they've been able to open their conversations and let more people in when they do things virtually. Have any of you guys experienced that recently?
Yeah, I would say, like the saying goes, like one door closes, another door opens. It kind of forced my tribe to be more modern, to adapt more into like the modern era with like technology, and to update their system and stuff like that. So yeah, kind of it was a little bit of a rude awakening for my tribe to go, more virtual and adapt.
Absolutely. How about you, Katie, Colin, in your communities? Were there anything else that you guys came into contact? Like Will talks about accessibility. Not everyone has, great Wi-Fi. How did you guys adapt to that, like during this last year, to really bring the community together?
I think for me, participation, there's only so much you can do, like putting things out, Zoom passwords, codes, different workshops online, in-person workshops outside. There's I think a big one is participation, getting people to want to participate and be out there. But I feel like just as more as you push it out there and get people to know what you're talking about, the more they'll want to participate. So I think that's a really big one, participation.
Yeah, for me, a lot of the things that I've seen is just because of the pandemic, I've actually been seeing a huge negative impact on tribal youth programs where youth councils are getting shut down. They're no longer having meetings, and youth voices are silent because they're not having a platform anymore to have a voice in their community. And that's something that I've noticed and that really needs to change, is because without youth being able to have a voice, you won't know what type of struggles they're having. And especially because of the pandemic, they're at home. Mental health is more of an issue now than it's ever been. And these type of talks right now, they're difficult and they're becoming much more sensitive with time. And if tribal communities really don't step up their game and actually make things more accessible for youth in particular, that there's going to be a huge negative impact in the future because of that. And for me, a lot of the things I've noticed through my work is that lateral oppression is a big thing. It's something that happens because of intergenerational trauma, and these type of conversations should have already happened, and we should already be working towards recovery. And for me, it's just that there needs to be a change. We can't have a huge gap in age within our tribal communities for workplace, and we need to have a foot in the door for all Native youth at all times, and there can't be this closed doors policy.
Thank you. And you brought up so many great points. We're going to shift the conversation now, but I think that's a perfect segue that Colin brings up. A lot of times, these are things that Native youth are facing, and they're considering in the back of their minds that might prevent them from taking that first step, from going from, I have a great idea and I want us to address this challenge in our community, to putting it into action and taking space, owning their space. The fear of acceptance from the community, or not even that, like, how do I make sure that other people feel accepted and wanted and have access, all of these things. We're going to go over now the different community guidelines of a conversation guide that we thought was helpful. So things we've learned from hosting our own virtual conversations as well as in-person trainings. And we hope that this will really open up so that more communities can have these conversations. So we'd love for you to chime in the comments as well. If you've experienced these things, if there's any like important things that you think youth should take into consideration when they're addressing maybe a difficult topic. We at Unity challenge communities to really take ownership of their challenges and talk about problem solving and doing a strength-based approach. And I wanted to ask our panel here, why do you think it's important when you are approaching a community to take a strength-based approach rather than let's get together and talk about like everything that's wrong with our community? How does that set the tone of the conversation, do you feel?
I think it's good to start with your strengths because then you're already moving forward with what you're good at, and then you can work out the smaller stuff like what you're weaker at. Um, so like you can build upon your what your what good stuff that you have in your arsenal, and grow upon it. Um, so yeah, I think moving forward, as long as you're moving forward, because you could be stuck in working on those weaknesses of yours. So, and you might not go anywhere if you're stuck trying to figure something out that you haven't figured out in a long time.
Absolutely. So I'm going to turn it over to Colin, and he's going to share a step, like one of the first steps to really, when you're opening a community gathering, obviously you want to have people, creating a space that involves a number of different steps. But Colin, could you tell us a little bit more about like reinforcing the purpose and why that's important to do right off the bat when you have a group of people and you're about to talk about something that people maybe, feel uneasy about?
Yeah. For me, like it's always important to make sure that when we gather that we always know what we're aiming towards. Because I know when you bring up a lot of sensitive subjects, you can really connect with other people's heartfelt moments, things like that, and sway from what your purpose is. And you could bring up so much that you just get lost in the depth of it. And it's really important to stay on a track to solving one solution at a time, although no one solution is more important than the other. But for me, what I've noticed is the first thing that is important for me is always making sure that when people walk in the door, they feel welcomed. So when I was working with youth, one of the things I found important is I used to have youth council meetings where we all sat at the desk. And I actually broke away from that habit because when you're having such formal meetings, nobody feels comfortable during that. That's something that old people use these days. And so I actually we had a library setting with giant bean bags. They can chill wherever they want. They can have a snack. They can just be themselves, not worry about being judged. And that helps productivity. But being sure that we all know that even though we're all ourselves and we're all doing what we want, we have to make sure we can come together to focus on one thing is very important because it shows not only our strength as a group, but it also shows our resiliency to be able to come together through our different walks in life and being able to get on track and getting stuff done.
Absolutely, that's so key. And I love the idea of it matters even the room. How is the room inviting? If I'm, a teacher at the front of the room, it's almost like I'm talking to you versus when like here we're gathered, we're all on the same page. I love that. So thinking about even before people walk in, what are some things that you could do to open up the meetings and the conversations? And circles are really powerful, not just because they're super tradish and we do everything in circles, but because everyone, puts their energy into the room and then it expands around the circle. So I love that. Next up, we had a comment from Anthony. He said, have you ever had meetings with tribes south of the border? What would people say if tribes took in these different immigrants and really had a intertribal or intergenerational conversations? And I said, how thankful do you think they would be? And he says, I know that's kind of extreme just saying, but some people south of the border have tribes too, and there's a lot of people wanting belonging. So thank you, Anthony, for bringing that up, because that goes along with what Colin was saying about belonging. Right off the bat, when you enter a room, you're looking around, you're like, oh, I know her. Oh, she's trouble. Do I want to sit by her? Do I not? You know, you're scanning the room to see who else is here. So we want to do our best to make sure they're welcomed. So next I'm gonna hand it over to Sunwai. And could you talk a little bit about, and I'm gonna ask the people in the chat as well, why do you think it's important before we encourage dialogue to have like a mutual respect or deep listening to what others want to share? Like, what are some things you can do to kind of like set ground rules so that people feel like, you know, this isn't just a free for all where we're at the ante table hanging out saying whatever we want, right? It's, if we're hosting a community conversations, why do you think it's important to kind of have those, okay, we all agree that we're going to, you know, XYZ?
Well, first of all, it's important so we avoid gaslighting people's responses. You know, there's a difference between venting to your friends and venting to a licensed counselor, therapist, or anything, but that venting always needs to have that mutual respect. You also have to have that type of encouragement and stuff like that. You know, you don't want to be venting to someone who's going to cut you off and tell you that, oh, I've been through that too, and I've had it worse. And so you don't want to be doing that. We got to set those agreements to people, and we got to practice and be patient and not interrupt. We are the facilitators of this little room, our little circle, and we want to be able to control the waves of emotions that are coming through in a nice, steady up and lower down type of slope. Being considerate of saying things or being considerate of one's feelings and thoughts gives them validation, and that type of validation makes people comfortable. We got to be able to be comfortable when somebody gets frustrated too, because stuff like this will be frustrating, and it's going to be difficult, and it's going to be really objective instead of factual. Whenever we got to be able to be in an argument that's not really going to be correcting them. Really, it's just going to be there to listen. And we're not offering solutions, we're just offering a space. And we got to be able to be relaxed enough to be pushed around on our morals and objectives just a little bit. You don't have to agree with stuff, you just got to be able to connect with them. And connection is key to being personal. We can go back and forth and consider the strategies for taking breaks and hitting the reset button, but in the same situation, our conversation has to get back to our first talking point, has to have that full circle moment, just like any book. In any book, you'll find the end of a story within the first few pages of the book. And that's the same situation that we can go with hosting a healthy conversation and dialogue for our community members. It's especially difficult with elders. I mean, I know I've run into a lot of situations where I'm curious to know about how their early life was, but I don't want to pry into some really personal traumas. But at the same time, if you don't pry, then you're never going to know. And I'm the type of pushy person who's patient enough to deal with somebody that's borderline racist. It's kind of goofy. It really is kind of goofy where natives are prejudiced towards other natives. And it's nothing new. It really isn't anything new, but and I don't agree with some of the things that I hear from my elders, but I'm not going to be there to correct them or make statements that hurt their feelings. I'm just going to be there to ask questions and connect with them, because tough love is love in all. And I think the whole situation of finding agreements and respect is just acknowledgement.
I love that. And I love, and I'm going to open it back up to see if Katie or Will has anything else to add to that. I think it makes such a great point of knowing that I'm going to quote Mary Kim, because she's a great mentor, and she says this all the time. She's all, you really have to keep in mind people's good intentions. Like, we're all here because we care about our community, even if like we don't agree on something. You know, recognizing that people with good intentions misspeak or make statements that can hurt or offend, or letting others know like how their words affect you, and taking ownership of that. And it might be misunderstood by others, right? So when that does happen, and I'll open it up for like Katie or Will, you know, if that happens, you know, we can't control what other people think when we bring people together, but what have you seen that's been helpful to like someone was saying, we can take those breaks, or we can acknowledge people, but how do we bring it back, right? She said full circle. What have you seen that's been helpful to remind people that like, hey, we're all on the same page here, or we all care about this issue?
Something that I've learned in my community is the biggest thing is, even if you're wrong, at least in the end, you're learning. And then you can go back and do it correctly. And then it will just be a smoother way of just learning something new. And making sure you ask questions. Questions are very, very important.
I think sometimes you just gotta sit back and listen. You know, sometimes we're so strong-headed to, you know, think we're always right. So I think got to be more patient and let them talk and let them have their say, and then, you know, then you can have your say too. But I think just being more open-minded and to everyone's opinions, and try to really think about their opinion instead of, you know, jumping right away that they're saying they're wrong, or, you know, that's not how it should be. um, I think those are some things that we should apply to our life and such.
Thank you. Absolutely. I agree 100%. And feel free in the chats if you guys, as advisors or youth councils, if you've ever, you know, how do you bring people together and remind us all of the shared mission and values of your communities? Feel free to add those in the chats as well. So I'll pass it next to Katie. And when they start to begin a conversation, so you're there, you've set your intentions, and you're opening the conversation, you sometimes they said, you know, it's helpful to start off, like Unity is known for our crazy, outrageous icebreakers, or start off the conversation kind of like easy before you dive straight into the hard questions. Like, I would never open it up and like say, hi, my name's Lauren Ashley. What's the deepest, darkest thing that's ever happened to you? Like, I would never, like, people might get up and walk out, right? So like, Katie, from your experience and with your youth councils, why do you think it's good to start off the conversation maybe with something that like they can tell a story, or like a surprise or something like that? Why do you think it's easier to start a conversation on a lighter note?
I think because I'm the president of our youth council, so I always have to start off the conversations, and just to like get everybody involved, especially because a lot of the youth are very, very shy. Um, Always starting off standing or with a game, um, or just like something small, like getting to know what you did today, or something like what's your favorite animal, what's your favorite color. That's usually my go-tos. Something super simple where everyone could just share, and then more times they share, then the more they'll want to talk and get deeper into a conversation. And so that's just what I think. Something small like a standing game, or something where everybody's going to participate, and then everybody's going to want to participate even more.
It's easier to consume the smaller bites, and once you get a good taste of what's going on, whatever you're doing, then you can take the bigger bites, the bigger steps, and then you'll be uh more comfortable with whatever you're doing.
Absolutely. And I think that's so key. And I think we see that a lot, especially when if I'm going to a night where my community wants to talk about prescription drug abuse, I'm already going to think like, oh, this is going to be heavy. So it almost makes me feel relieved when it's like, oh, we can laugh here. It's almost giving us permission to be human, right? And like you said, it's easier to digest in like small steps. Like, we're going to do this together. We're going to come together to talk about this. And I love the fact that we mentioned here in the comments, storytelling is a really good key point. And I love that. Yes. Colin or Sunwai, what was the importance of letting people tell their story? I know sometimes we can be like, oh my gosh, we have agenda and we need to stick to the time. And I know this happens in our communities all the time. But what is the importance of like letting people talk? And if they want to tell a story, like letting them tell a story and not cutting them off, or sometimes you might be like, okay, thank you, Grandpa, but why is storytelling important to Native youth, do you think?
For me, storytelling is just a childhood memory. Everything that I was told by my grandmas and my grandpas stuck with me. The way they spoke helps me in today's conversations, because now I have a beginning, middle, and end to whatever I'm talking about. Whenever I let people talk about their stories, I usually try to keep inside my mind the topic we're talking about. And it's like a mind map. Wherever you get an idea from their conversation, you can pause them very quickly and quickly jump to a different key point in what they're talking about. It's all a matter of listening carefully, being patient, and knowing when it's going to get too heavy. Because once it gets too heavy, there's really no going back. And if it gets to that point to where they're sobbing and crying, you gotta be strong enough to help piece them back together, because essentially you as the facilitator are responsible for opening a wound. And being a facilitator, a good one, is really all about slowly being able to guide the conversation based on what they share. And it's all based on who your audience is. You're never going to get a perfect audience that's there on time, ready to talk about all the key points that you want to talk about. It's all about being flexible and resilient in each moment. And really, the storytelling components are what make each webinar and each training unique. Because even though we all have similar lives and experiences, none of us have the same personality. None of us have the same charisma or characteristics. And our shared experiences are what molded us into our unique personalities. And in those moments when you hear them share their stories, you can think to yourself that, oh, so this is why they are the way they are today. This is why she glows when she speaks, or this is why he's really passionate about stuff. I really love storytelling because you get to hear their confidence in what they're passionate about, or you get to hear their type of sadness or their pride whenever they're talking about something tragic. And that's really beautiful. It's really beautiful in any type of conversation where you get to hear someone's real voice when it cracks. And it's really also beautiful when you get to hear them scream when they're angry, or you get to hear them laugh when they're happy. All of that comes back into storytelling, and when it does happen, just let it go, but also know when to steer that conversation back away from something that's potentially scarring.
I love that. I love that you brought up, you know, we want to avoid triggers, and knowing when you're going into the conversation, like there may be some triggers, and when we feel our circle like going off balance, you know, we've practiced like some suggestions in the comments. Singing a song when someone is crying brings peace back to the circle, or using medicines, or getting up and stretching, just moving around releases the energy. So I love that we talked about that. And just knowing, like you said, you got to go with it. You got to trust the process, that this is a safe place, and no matter where our conversation goes or where those stories happen, that it'll be okay. And this is the reason why we ask you to speak up. So Colin, next step is deepen the conversation, and how, you know, once making sure people are all comfortable, you know, how do you deepen the conversation using like different guides, or what's some examples of what you would say to people to bring up the topic, or you know, do you have any suggestions for them, things that stood out without blaming or shaming or even rescuing people? You know, what have you seen when people dive into like the deeper conversations?
Yeah, for me, a lot is when you get into those deep conversations, you really have to make sure you're keeping an eye on the environment too. If people are opening up, speaking, and letting themselves be vulnerable, you have to nurture their vulnerability. For me, it's always, if I ever see that a conversation is going deep, I always make it a point that if I have sage available, I always make sure I smudge the area, keep everything as pure as I can to really allow them to express themselves. Um, Water is also something that in my community we use because of its healing properties. And I always say that if you ever get into a conversation that's so deep and you start crying, that you're actually having a conversation. Every other conversation is just surface level. Until something actually comes out of you, it's never actually coming out of you. But for me, it's like when you get those conversations, though, you really need to make sure that they feel safe and that they can trust that it's a safe place for them to express themselves. Being able to navigate into these conversations really depends on how vulnerable you are too. You need to be able to let everybody else in the room know that you're here for them and that you're not here just on the surface level, and you're actually going to be diving in the water with them and helping them through every step and making sure that they feel safe too. And a lot of things for that is just taking baby steps into it. If you see a conversation and won't go deep, don't push it. But if you see that they might be getting a little bit comfortable later on, maybe just take them a little bit deeper into the water each step of the way. But just really making sure that they feel that the area is safe and that their vulnerability is accepted. Because if they're vulnerable and they don't feel safe after being vulnerable, they may build a cocoon and never want to open up again. So you really have to ensure to nurture their vulnerability, because if that atmosphere gets broken, it may not only just be broken at the meetings, but it may be broken in other areas of their life as well. So being able to really make sure you can take care of that and nurture it is something that I found is really important. And after that happens, you notice that other people, it's just like a wildfire. They see the vulnerability and it makes them feel like they're able to be vulnerable too. And that really creates a great feeling in the room where you can see that people are actually able to feel vulnerable, open up, express. And for some people, it may be the only time in maybe their lives that they have a place where they can open up like that.
That's so powerful. We hear in the comments, they said, thank you, Colin. That's really important. And to think about that, like how you're going to encourage people. So, you know, as you're reaching a point in the conversation where like you're extending gratitude and you're sharing how these experience impacted you, and offer like safe space for others to show, I think it's so important to just know that people listen and interact and share differently. I remember one time, I'm going to share this. I was a drug and alcohol. Like if you got in trouble with the law, you were court ordered to come to one of my classes and talk about like how drug and alcohol impacted you. And I brought this amazing traditional healer guy in because he was a beautiful singer, and I thought it would be a great like facilitator. And it was a bunch of teens, and so to them, you know, they may be listening, but they may be like doing something else, or they may have like an earphone in, and I always just let the space be, like you were talking about, Colin, right? Like letting them be vulnerable and let them listen at their own space. But in his mindset, he's like, no, you need to, you know, he challenged them to like put your earphones down, sit down, and the energy with the challenging, it just didn't work. It didn't work because they were opposed to the authority versus like a nurturing and wanting to open up that way. And it just wasn't a good session, and I had to learn that the hard way. That community conversation was really hard to bring back that youth and re-engage him, because he felt like he was being attacked because he wasn't listening or engaging the way other people were. And so it's just, you know, and you'll never know until you get there in the community conversation, but knowing like as the host, to bringing them back in and be like, I still value you, I'm here. I think that's just so important. So I'd like to bring up Will. We talked about like as a facilitator that sometimes we open ourselves and we open our wounds if we're talking about community challenges and our experiences opening up. My question to you and the audience is, it's also the responsibility to bring the conversation to a close, so you don't just bring up all these emotions and then send people out into the community. Why, you know, in your experience, you know, why do you think that's important, that you don't just like stir up things and then be like, yeah, okay, we have drug problems, go out into the community, you know, good luck with that. Like, why do you think it's important when you're hosting these conversations to make sure that there is some sort of conclusion or hope at the end of these messages?
Um, when everything's going out, like you're expressing yourself and all your emotion is going out, I feel like it's a good way to have a good ending by focusing on the closure, or the answer to, you know, all those things that you had and that you expressed yourself or had questions for. Because if you just, you know, let everything out, then, you know, uh, you're because sometimes when you express yourself, you know, you're looking for answers, and you know, you want to leave in a good way. You don't want to leave in a at a bad closing, because then, you know, like Colin was saying, you might not want to open up again, if you know, if you're looking for those things.
What are some other ways that are good? Thank you, Will. That's so good. What are some other ways that you help engage the community and come to a closing and make sure that everybody felt heard?
I think when you're conducting a circle, listening to everyone's expression, and kind of even given something that you relate to, their situation or their expression, um, and kind of give what you've experienced, and how you either relate to them, or how you either solve that situation, um, and what things you learned um, with whatever you've gone through. Um, and I think ending it with prayer in either song or something um, that that you have in possession at the time will help with a good closure.
And I also think a better way to help close the conversation is ensuring that we're going to have another conversation, continue the consistency, let them know that our resources do not stop with just that one type of in-person meeting, and that sharing your appreciation for them, sharing a little piece of their soul. Like you mentioned, they're looking for answers, and we could be that resource to provide more resources. You got to be prepared to have that 1-800 number suicide hotline. Got to be prepared to have the local resources for community stuff, domestic violence houses, shelter houses, or even drug related or substance abuse type of guidelines. Just something that helps them feel reassured that they were heard and that there's others still looking for that type of help.
Thank you. That's so important, especially, and I love, if you're going to be there, consistency is key. And, like us, we're going to be here every Thursday at 4 p.m. here, having open dialogue and community conversations and engaging our communities, for the next month, and so that people know that it's okay to speak up and to contribute. I love that. And scheduling another conversation, asking the community like, hey, this was really good. Do you want this to continue? Or are you ready to move into like action planning, or really getting their feedback? I know a lot of advisors. We have one here who wrote, asking people to share what they learned and if they're ready to take the next step, or if they need more time to have this conversation. And that's really important, right? Like, are we done? Just because the clock says we're done doesn't mean, we're done unpacking this topic, and just being flexible. And so I think a lot of times with like advisors, or we have a plan and we have a timeline, but letting our communities know that we are going to make space and take time to collect feedback, and not already have like 3 steps ahead. Oh, well, that was nice, and I'm going to still do this, right? Like, to put their communications into action. And that does take a little bit more time. As we've seen, the peer guides over the last year, they have been at the driving front of like choosing these topics and developing, the strategies. And that's completely different versus us just saying, okay, here's what we're going to do, go out there. So I just really want to thank you guys for that. So another one, it says extend gratitude to everyone in their community for their courage and willingness. Encourage group members to follow up with somebody if they need a deeper dialogue, and identifying resources in the community. So I just want to remembering that, it's an ongoing process. And how do you let your communities know? Just because we have one community event doesn't mean that we've taken down systemic racism, or that we've taken down the whole issue, but like acknowledging like today it made a real impact in the people's lives that were involved. How do you really let people know that, hey, you are part of something important, that it's an ongoing process as they move forward. So we'll end it there and I will take time to go through each of you. If you had one thing to say to people, thank you for your wisdom. Our partner says, thank you so much for your wisdom and sensitivity, for your commitment. So many important points today. What is one thing, thank you, Kara. What is one thing that you would leave with somebody if they're brave enough to open up a dialogue in their community, whether they're 15 or 80, what would you want them to walk away with today? Like the courage to take a healthy risk and to talk about, what is it that's troubling our communities that's resulting in dropout rates or involvement with crime, because these conversations really are creating safety when we talk about our what's going on. So what would you want to say to them? And we'll go around and then we'll end in prayer.
I'll start. One thing I would say is just whenever you want to bring up these conversations or really try to make a difference in the community, just know that you have to practice self-love before you go into anything. Just know that when you're stepping into this and you're about to know that you're going to face a situation where you're going to be vulnerable, just make sure that you know that you can feel safe with yourself. And then no matter what the outcome is of what you're going into, that you are going to be loved at the end of it by yourself. And no matter what happens, either you'll make a big impact or you'll have that voice resonating and it'll have a ripple effect and eventually take off.
Something I'd want people to take away from this is just to take healthy risks. Just like start something. Don't maybe don't be a follower. Um, like be a doer. That's what my mom always tells me. Be a doer, not a follower. Start things. I think that's really important just to start, because if you don't start it and no one else starts it, then it will never happen. And so I think that's just something really important to do, is just be the leader and push yourself, and um, people will just go along with you.
And I guess that leaves me, like Colin said, like Katie said, just get out there and start doing the conversations. Be that healthy person to take the risk and take care of yourself first. You know, you can't heal people without healing yourself, and you're never going to heal yourself all the way. You just got to be able to be there and supportive. Something I kind of learned from Al-Anon and attending AA meetings is just that we've all been there, and that somebody else has lived the same mistake you just made, and that the traumas don't last forever. You got to find that serenity and peace to be able to move forward, because if you're still using a reason to be messing things up for yourself, then you're not ready to move on. And we're never going to heal ourselves until we're fully ready to forgive and move on. And forgiveness doesn't always require an apology from somebody. Forgiveness starts with yourself. And starting with yourself is the best way to go. I think what helped me out when I first started doing these difficult conversations was just kind of playing it all out in my head of what actually happened when I was a kid, and realizing that who I am today wouldn't have been possible if those things didn't happen to me. You got to be proud of your mistakes and your past mistakes and your present mistakes and your future mistakes, because nobody's perfect. Even though we're sitting here on this webinar, I'm sure we got a whole mess of stuff going on behind our camera screens. So don't make us look like we're the heroes, because we're here showing you how to host difficult conversations. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, like what Sun was saying, um, everyone has things that you're going through the same thing, and you just got to be understanding and remember that you might be going through the same thing that they're going through. Just be in their shoes. And another thing, I guess, is strength is in numbers. When you support another person, then you're gonna be stronger together than being alone.
Thank you so much. And in our comments, Adina shared, I would say to them to have hope and not to be discouraged and to keep going, because awareness is powerful. And I really love that. I think that's a good spot to reflect on today. The mission of Unity is inspiring hope and changing lives. And so through having these courageous conversations in your community and being brave enough to take a healthy risk, and following these different steps, we can create hope in our communities that really do have a lasting impact on crime and youth feeling like they can change and learn from mistakes and turn things around for themselves. So this is part one of a 5-part online learning series, and awareness is key and it is powerful. And so next week on Thursday, we will be going through the different steps of how you yourself can host and create community awareness to address the different issues. So I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart. And I would like somebody to lead us either in a song or a prayer of a form of gratitude to end in a good way. So those of you who are on the Zoom call, I encourage you to take this healthy risk, and we'll close from there. We will be posting these different stages of a conversation guide along with this recording on our Unity website at www.unityinc.org. And this will also be available on Facebook and YouTube for people to watch. So we encourage you to come back here same time next week. And the topic for next week will be our community needs, regional comparisons of top issues facing Native youth, but also empowering Native youth to really learn, what is the root cause of a community challenge, and so that they can, what is it that you want to raise awareness on. So I appreciate you, and our comments. I'm very inspired by your messages tonight. Thank you so much. And yes, we will send a new link to everyone. Thank you all. Who would like to close us off tonight from our youth?
All right, I can go ahead and do that. So I just want to say Chimi Gwesh Shamado for everything that you've done for us tonight. And thank you for allowing us to have this space to open up and connect with everybody and to share our words and to create a powerful movement. And thank you to Unity and all the attendees tonight for being here to express their feelings and concerns with us and to be present in the moment. And I hope everybody is being safe during these times and that they have someone in their life that they can talk to and be there for them through those times of hardship. And I hope that they have a great rest of their week and that they're able to go out and enjoy this beautiful weather that we've been having, unless they live somewhere where the weather's not so good. I'm sorry. Otherwise, I just hope that everybody here just can leave with something strong today and have a sense of worthiness and a home glitch.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. And we appreciate you and know that you are loved and appreciated. And together we can heal our communities. And we look forward to seeing you next week at 4 p.m. Thank you.